Chapter 24. Maxwell Stanton sat in his living room, abandoned. His brother and sister-in-law had left mysteriously, without explanations, or even goodbyes. Alistair had found neither Willie nor the coachman, and had, in fact, himself disappeared during the hunt. Hours ago, the sheriff had dropped by to inform the mayor that the Newton boy was returned home by none other than Paxton Reign. Maxwell had not yet decided whether or not to consider that as the only good news he'd heard all day. Suddenly, without warning, Willie and Alistair appeared in the doorway, both breathing heavily and looking frantic. Willie's eyes were wide with frenzy, and Maxwell noted a large, purplish bruise on the side of his face. "We're ruined, sir. We need to go, now. Get your stuff, quick." Maxwell leapt to his feet, alarmed. "What the dickens are you talking about? And where have you been?" He wasn't the least bit ashamed that it had been Alistair who'd noticed that Willie had been gone for several days, and not him. Reluctantly, Alistair held up what he'd been concealing behind his back. The flagrant headline of the newspaper was clearly visible between Alistair's two hands. Mayor Stanton's murderous plot. How he conspired to slay renowned bounty hunter and rancher Paxton Reign in order to force the hand of his wife, the beautiful Elizabeth Reign. Eyewitness report. Shocking details on page 2. "I got suspicious of that Amelia, sir," Willie began, perceiving that Stanton would be speechless for several moments. "So I followed her around. She was in cahoots with those two printers of the town newspaper the whole time she was here." Alistair, irritated with Willie's poor reporting skills, chimed in. "In exchange for a percentage of the profits, Amelia said she would give them the story of a century. They were told how to spy on you and obtain the needed information to sink your administration." Observing the way Stanton was looking at him, he quickly clarified. "That's what Willie told me on the way here, sir, in not so many words." They caught him eavesdropping and imprisoned him until they'd finished printing their dirty scoop. I found him heading this way, just after they'd released him. "Yep. I was coming here right away, sir," Willie confirmed. "There's more." Alistair winced under Maxwell's furious scrutiny. "Gus helped Amelia escape. Her getaway must have been planned from the inception of their scheme. She asked me to leave the drapes open in the parlor, claiming that the stars were so beautiful, when all along she was helping her associates to spy and preparing for her scheduled escape." Stanton ripped the newspaper from Alistair's grasp and turned to page 2, rapidly scanning the contents of the article. "How do they know so much? This is impossible. Amelia wasn't even here when I did half of this," he droned dismally. "Willie mentioned he saw a stack of letters at the printer's. One from Jack Strom, among others," Alistair said. "We must go." Willie seized Maxwell's arm. "Now!" "Sir, the paper boys were shouting the headline all over town. It won't be long till the whole town—" Alistair was interrupted by the sound of a crowd gathering out front. "Quickly, sir!" Willie shrilled, pulling forcefully on the mare's arm. Alistair sprung to the window, lifted the sheer curtain which obstructed his view. "I would advise that you listen, sir." Maxwell shook his head and fought against Willie's strenuous grip. "Please, Maxwell!" Willie begged, using the first name of his boss, something he seldom did, conveying his belief that these were the direst of circumstances. "I must face this," the mayor said resolutely. "A Stanton does not run from his actions, nor their consequences." Willie, trembling visibly, let him go. Maxwell Stanton pushed his way through the two servants and went directly to the mansion's front door. He could hear the mob outside, could hear some of them calling for him. Opening the door with no trepidation, he stepped out onto the threshold, and the crowd went quiet with surprise. "Of this newspaper's charge, I am guilty." "No! Stop!" Willie shouted, shoving past the mayor as two men ascended the stairs. "Don't touch him." He abruptly punched one of the men in the head, causing the mob to respond with loud protestations. Two more men automatically exited the crowd, seized Willie, and carried him away, kicking and screaming viciously. Maxwell did not fight. He simply let himself be taken. Alistair stood at the mayor's doorway, refusing admittance, but was quickly overcome as men pushed him aside and entered the mansion. The mob ushered Maxwell toward the center of town, where he assumed he was to be hung. Suddenly, the sound of a gun being fired rang through the air. It silenced everyone as they looked around inquisitively to discover whose gun had been fired. On the sheriff's office porch stood John Scythe, his gun pointed up in the air and still smoking. He cleared his throat loudly, holstered his weapon, and said gruffly, "Quiet down. Hand him over to me." The mob propelled their prisoner toward the steps and laughed shallowly when the latter tripped and fell, sprawling before the man who represented the law in their town. "I understand," the sheriff began as he helped Maxwell to his feet, "that it might be our mayor has done some wrong. Might even go as far as to say he made some foolish choices." He raised his voice as people began to murmur complaints. "But what he's done mainly for love. He loved Elizabeth Reign, and would have done anything for her." "Or to her," an anonymous voice shouted from the crowd. Undaunted, the sheriff continued, "I know when it were my time, I done some pretty stupid things in the name of love. In fact, I still do." His lips quirked slightly when he heard some chuckling in the crowd. "Hang this man? Why, I'll be darned if we ain't all indebted to him. Look around you. See the wealth which this man is sure straight responsible for bringing to our town. Pat the pockets on those fancy clothes you're all wearing. And tell me you don't feel your fat wallets. Thankfully no real harm's been done. Why, Paxton Reign himself hasn't turned the mare in. What's that tell you all?" He cleared his throat loudly. "Let you men decide among you who claims they's never done anything desperate, or stupid, or wrong, in the name of love, and let him wrap this here noose around the mare's neck." He tossed the noose toward the mob, and it landed with a decided thud. The mob, many of them avid church-goers and Bible readers, comprehended his reference to Scripture. Slowly and silently they began to disperse, but then a voice cried out, "Well, I for one think we need a new mayor. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't trust Maxwell Stanton to run a ghost town honestly." John Scythe spotted the man to whom the outspoken voice belonged. He recognized Lester Bingham immediately, one of the printers and the man who had written the damning article about the mare. "Who do you think should take his place, Lester?" the sheriff snapped. "You?" Lester smirked mischievously. "I'm willing to run for office, sure. And if I'm the one elected, I'll do the job. We must, of course, hold an election to allow the people to decide who is best fitted for the role. That is the law, right, Sheriff?" "You expect to be trusted after publicly admitting that you spied on the mayor? Not the most trustworthy use of time." The people continued to murmur. The sheriff once again addressed the crowd. "If you're all determined to see another mayor run these parts, then bring me your nominations. The deputies and I'll sort 'em out, and we'll hold an election. For now, go home, kiss your wives, have some dinner." The townspeople dispersed, leaving Lester Bingham standing alone before the office of the sheriff. "You had better watch your step, Sheriff. If this town were to find out that you were in cahoots with Stanton, your office might also become vacant." The sheriff walked straight up to the man and glared him down. He did not budge, though John didn't expect him to. "I'd be taking my own advice, if I were you, Bingham. I don't want to investigate the printing press with a fine-tooth comb. I don't know if your equipment would last through the process. I'd sure be interested in learning how you got your information and all." Lester sneered, turned on his heels, and walked away.